Thanks everybody for tuning into the Ready Player One book club. This is session 5. Tonight we will be covering chapters 20 through 24. When last we left Wade, he was in a deep dark depression and an utter, just going through a lot of self-loathing. In chapter 20, where we're picking up with Wade now, we've heard about his real life apartment, but now we're going to take a tour of Parzival's Oasis stronghold that he calls Falco, which is an asteroid that he purchased. It's like a few square kilometers, and it's basically the only place in the entire Oasis where he feels completely and utterly safe, because only those that Wade allows access to the stronghold have access to it. To me, having my own little place where, I'm not going to be bothered by anyone or anything that I can just go to does sound amazing. This is essentially Parzival's like floating island in the Oasis that he doesn't have to worry about, anyone or anything coming to harm him. He can have complete and total peace, autonomy, and, nothing bad can happen to him here that he doesn't want to happen. He tells us about the Oasis elections. They're coming up. We find out that Will Wheaton is one of the guys who will be running again and is the incumbent, and that he wants to continue to supporting that because the other guy and Will Wheaton have been fighting for user rights for well over a decade, and they've done a really good job at it. So they're going to keep them. They're going to keep them in office. And he talks about streaming TV stations in the Oasis. Things like all the High Five have them. So you have Artivision or Artemis Vision, something like that. And then Parzival has his own channel, as well as Daito and Shoto, called the Dai Show. And they're able to pick and choose, like what types of media they want to have play on their streaming services. Considering where this show is taking place right now, I find that hilarious. It's like it's a pretty lonely life for Parzival right now, because despite everything being connected online, he's never felt so disconnected from his friends that he had in H and Artemis. He's broken those relationships down, and he's having a hard time because he can't figure out how to rebuild them. When he needs help, though, in completing a Japanese language quest, he reaches out to Daito and Shoto, who the last time that they had met, they didn't end on the best of terms because they thought that Wade was trying to get everyone together in an alliance, which is something they just totally didn't want, and they kind of just left. This was back in chapter 15 in the basement meeting. Completing the quest, though, earns them Hayata's beta capsule. It will transform the user into Ultraman for 3 minutes. And Ultraman is essentially one of the greatest. It's like the greatest Japanese superhero. It would essentially be like being able to transform into Tony Stark or any of the Avengers, really, for us here in America. Parzival does let Daito and Shoto keep the capsule because he says that the capsule it should belong in Japanese hands. This is not something that I can take. He is, Japan's greatest superhero. You guys are Japanese. You guys deserve to have this. Because there was some debate about over who gets to keep the capsule once we complete this quest, because there's only one of them. And they had mentioned like the fairest thing to do would be to auction it, but Wade didn't want to keep it. He was like, you guys keep it. I just wanted to complete the quest. It's totally fine. Wade also saw this as an opportunity to make friends with Daito and Shoto. So he gave Hayata's beta capsule to Daito and Shoto. And afterwards, after Wade completes this, he has to go to work. Apparently, he's taken a job now because, for whatever reason, he felt like he needed a job. It's been about 6 months at this point since the events of the Coppergate and them learning about the clue for the Jade Key. Afterwards, like I said, he goes to work. He does real work as a tech support agent in a virtual Oasis-based call center. Wade even refers to this as his own virtual hell. Can you imagine logging into your computer and playing a game just to go sit down in a cubicle at a virtual computer and make phone calls to people that are having tech support issues? This sounds terrible. When his 10-hour shift, he works this for 10 hours every day. He does it 4 days a week, 10 hours a day. When his 10-hour shift ends, Wade's discovered that Artemis has found the Jade Key. Some other notable things in chapter 20. The text is set in the future. Details in this chapter bear similarities to current modern day life, right? Everyone in the Oasis gets a personal television channel, so this is exactly like Twitch. Anybody can have their own personal, Twitch channel to do with what they want as long as they adhere to the terms of service, which encourages everyone's narcissistic tendencies. Many people turn the cameras on themselves and repackage the minutia of their daily lives for public consumption. I think this is speaking to vlogs. This behavior validates and normalizes self-obsession, much similar to how like Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube can do. In 2045, Wade Watts doesn't vote in the United States government elections because he doesn't see the point. Wade doesn't live in the real world. He lives in the Oasis. He feels the world is doomed, and besides, the only people who can get elected were movie stars, reality television personalities, or radical televangelists. Many people feel the same way in our own time. This was released back in 2011. So this is like 9 years ago, and now we're seeing this. So this is like Klein really had some prescience here and clairvoyancy, which is why Wade also, like it talks about the elections and how he doesn't want, to participate in the United States government elections, but he will participate in the Oasis elections because he cares and gives a shit about the Oasis. He does not give a shit about the real world. And so with that, we're going to move on to chapter 21. So in chapter 21, the Sixers have a tablet of finding that allows its bearer to discover the location of any avatar within the Oasis. This was an item that came up for auction, and, Gunter clans were bidding on it back and forth. Think about if something extremely valuable went up on eBay and, everyone in the world wanted it because of the advantage that it would give them in the competition. Tablet of finding would be very good. At the last second, the Sixers, Nolan Sorrento comes in. He puts in a snipe bid and bids more money than anybody could ever afford just to let Gunters know that, like, you were never going to win this. You can't win this. This is him basically rubbing salt into a wound and trying to kill the hope of the Gunters. After Artemis finds the Jade Key, the Sixers use the tablet to discover she is in Sector 7. The Sixers and numerous other Gunters converge on Sector 7. Parzival, having lost his first place rank to Artemis, he loses it. He starts berating himself, basically calling himself every name in the book to try and motivate himself to take the quest back up again and actually put in the work that he hasn't been doing. And he manages to renew his determination, and he begins to research, Sector 7, because he finds out, just like the Sixers did, she was in Sector 7 because the Sixers moved their fleet to Sector 7. The Sixers are just telegraphing their information because of where they're moving, because there's so many of them. It's like, though they have that advantage, everyone knows what they're doing. So it's not hard to see. So he travels to the planet arcade in Sector 7, believing it's the home of a collection of trophies mentioned in the clue. The captain conceals the jade key in a dwelling long neglected, but you can only blow the whistle when all the trophies have been collected. So he thinks that in Planet Arcade, because there's a collection of trophies from that Halliday had won, which are his video game awards, he thinks that this might be the place. So I'm gonna go check out Planet Arcade. To get there fast, Parzival decides to take his starship, the Vonnegut, through a Stargate to get to Arcade. Now, the Vonnegut is a Firefly class transport vessel from the show Firefly. I don't know if any of you have seen it. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. It is a wonderful show. And then also you need to go watch the movie Serenity, which is a direct sequel to the show Firefly. If you have not seen it, it is one of the best sci-fi shows ever, in my opinion. And you should definitely go watch it. The ship's also named after Kurt Vonnegut, which is one of Wade's favorite authors. Also in this chapter, Wade rethinks about, this Jade Key riddle. It must have something to do with, John Draper, who is the famous hacker whose name was called Captain Crunch. He blew a plastic whistle from Captain Crunch box and realized that, if he did this into a telephone to make long distance calls, it would give him the ability to, make long distance calls without being charged a dime. The Sixers have access to unlimited funding, which allows them to purchase powerful, expensive artifacts, which is why they purchased the Tablet of Finding. However, their extravagance is also a liability because it prevents them from operating in secret. Like I was saying, Sixers, because they're such a big organization, they move in mass wherever they go, so their movements are trackable and they telegraph everything they do. When the Sixers go to Sector 7, so do all the Gunters. They know what's up. The Sixers aren't being sneaky or sly. Essentially, all Gunters in the Oasis got the information for free, and IOI fit the bill for it, which is kind of funny. Now that he has fallen in second place behind Artemis, Parzival realizes that she was wise to sever their relationship. He hopes their relationship will resume when the quest is over, which motivates him to return to the hunt with single-minded devotion, because now he kind of has closure on it. He is motivated again. He's over his emo phase, shall we say, being in his self-loathing. He's over that. He's ready to get back into it, and we can move in to chapter 22. So in chapter 22, Parzival arrives on Arcade, which is a planet that exists as a tribute to early video games of all kinds. Big cabinet machines, vector graphic games like Battlezone. The whole planet's surface, it's designed actually like the 1980-81 vector graphic Battlezone. Beneath the surface, Arcade is a museum full of antique video game arcades. Each one a loving creation of an actual arcade that had once existed somewhere. So basically what Halliday did was he found all these pictures of arcades and that he used to go to, or that he hadn't even ever gone to, and recreated them inside this planet. So it's a planet filled with arcades, which sounds amazing to me because I love arcades. Venturing into the labyrinth of arcades and the exhibits that are on Planet Arcade, Parzival finds James Halliday's trophy collection. He soon realizes that these are not the trophies mentioned on the Jade Key clue. Leaving, though, he stumbles across a restaurant and arcade called Happy Time Pizza, which he recognizes as the one from Halliday's childhood. Inside the restaurant, he finds an out-of-order Pac-Man machine with a single quarter dated 1981, welded to the top of the cabinet. He plugs in the machine, and when he notices the highest score on the screen is 10 points away from the highest score possible, he decides the game represents some kind of hidden quest, and he must play a perfect game of Pac-Man to win it. Parzival succeeds in attaining a perfect score, and the previously like welded quarter that's on top of the cabinet falls off of the top and into his hand, and then it disappears into his inventory, and he can't pull it out, he can't examine it, like it doesn't it's like it's just there. He has the icon there, and he doesn't know what it means. In order to figure it out, he talks about that it would take him days, and even then he may not be able to figure it out, because the things that he would do in order to make that happen, the incantations, essentially, like it's like in D&D when you come across a magical item and you try to use knowledge arcane on the item to determine what it is, or take it to someone who has the knowledge to tell you what it is and what it does. You're not going to know. One of the most interesting parts about this scene, though, is while he's playing Pac-Man, he gets a scoreboard alert in the middle of it, and H has found the Jade Key, and this is stressing him out, and he is like, he's on the last screen of Pac-Man. The game is eating itself because there's not enough memory left, and he's played a perfect game up to this point, and he doesn't want to lose, and this is pulling his attention away. So he's constantly at odds right now with the competition and getting the perfect score in Pac-Man. And it's a very interesting scene. But he does get this quarter. He doesn't know what it does, and it goes into his inventory. H does send him a message, though, with a clue for the key's location, which is a picture of the manual for a 1980 text adventure called Zork. Parzival figures out that he must have to go to planet Frobaz, where there are multiple instances of a detailed recreation of the text adventure game Zork. Although Arcade proves to be a dead end regarding the Jade Key, Parzival's obsessive study of Anorak's Almanac allows him to recognize Happy Time Pizza as a place that was important to Halliday. His study of Pac-Man helps him realize that there's something strange about an unplugged machine with high scores saved. Even finding out H beat him to the Jade Key doesn't break his focus. The quarter that he wins from the perfect Pac-Man game it has to be some sort of magical object, although he has no idea of its purpose. H, grateful Parzival led him to the copper key's location, repays the favor by leaving Parzival, the location of the Jade Key. However, bitter. The reason for this, though, is because he and Parzival had an exchange that pretty much ended their friendship back. This would have been in chapter 20, where he lets us know about it. It happened sometime during the Artemis relationship thing. He basically told H that he wouldn't have found the copper key if it wasn't for him. And this has pretty much killed their friendship at this point. And it hasn't, there's been, the bridge has been burnt, and it hasn't yet been rebuilt. But H is still repaying the favor, so that they are square, they're even. He doesn't owe him shit. We'll see how that friendship, evolves moving forward. But currently, I don't know. It's tenuous at best. But let's go ahead and move on to chapter 23 here. After Wade sees this image that that H has sent him. He recognizes, that it's from Zork, and he teleports over to the planet Frobos. He finds himself in an immersive 3-dimensional version of Zork, which was originally just text-based. Like, you could type in simple commands to it, like go north, go south, grab the sword, that sort of thing in order to play this game. It was a text adventure. He's only played this once before, and he's played it so long ago he doesn't really remember everything about it. And on the box art is, it shows a dilapidated house, which is a dwelling long neglected. And there's a shelf in the house where you collect all these trophies by doing the things in the game. In the house, he finds a box of Captain Crunch cereal containing a toy whistle. He thinks it's the whistle mentioned in the Jade key clue, which, I mean, everything is pointing towards this right now, especially since he got the hint from H. Parzival completes Zork by collecting all 19 of the trophies and putting them on the shelf. When he places the final trophy inside the case, he blows the whistle, and the whistle transforms into a foil-covered key. Parzival's a little off-put by this at first because he was like, this doesn't look like a jade key. But he quickly peels back the silver foil, and it's jade. It's the jade key underneath the foil, which on the other side has the next clue. As Parzival is leaving the planet, an incoming fleet of Sixers damages his spaceship. Later that day, Nolan Sorrento and Shoto also secure jade keys. Daito's name disappears from the scoreboard, indicating that he has been killed. Parzival curses himself for having played Zork only once before he goes into this, describing his oversight as a shocking display of unforgivable ignorance. If he were more familiar with the game, he would have connected it to the Jade Key clue. He did not make the connection without explicit help from H, and this really hurts Parzival's pride, I'm sure. However, his familiarity with the game allows him to complete it quickly, and with the Sixers on the way to Frobos, speed is quite essential here. Nolan Sorrento, the leader of the Sixers, has made his way into the top 5 names on the scoreboard. Previously, the top 5 were all independent gunters. This advantage comes in part from the IOI's a violent strategy against other gunters. At this point, Sixers have attacked Parzival twice inside the Oasis and once in real life. When Daito's name disappears from the scoreboard, Parzival knows he has been killed, most likely by the Sixers. It is unclear whether Daito has been killed in real life or whether his avatar has just been killed inside the Oasis. So we know that the Sixers can go about doing things in real life because they blew up Wade's stacks, and also that they've tried to kill him in the club too. So we don't know what this means just yet. And now we're going to move over to chapter 24. This is a short chapter in chapter 24. Not a whole lot happens here. Wade is frustrated is at his inability to decipher the clue for the second gate. Continue your quest by taking the test. That's our clue. That's all Halliday gives us. Continue the quest by taking the test. Frobos becomes a war zone in this chapter. The Sixers have blockaded hundreds of Zork replicas, But independent gunters start to attack the blockades. The Sixers maintain 10, and within hours, hundreds of Sixers and independent gunters have attained the Jade Key. Additionally, thousands of gunters that have now attained the Copper Key. So now we have thousands of gunters with the Copper Key. We have hundreds of Sixers and independent gunters with copies of the Jade Key. Nolan Sorrento becomes the first to clear the second gate. Parzival, Artemis, H, and Shoto are now knocked out of the top 10 when numerous Sixers following Sorrento clear the second gate. 2 days later, Sorrento acquires the Crystal Key. Parzival wants to discuss his depressing news with a friend, but realizes he has no one to talk to. So he's back in the isolation mode again. Wade feels hopeless and decides to commit suicide after he loses the contest. He then receives a call from Shoto, who wants to give him something Daito left him in his will. Shoto explains Daito will not create another avatar. Daito's character in-game is dead. The Sixers now have a solid advantage in this contest. I mean, Sorrento's got a copy of the Crystal Key, and Wade has no idea about what this next clue actually means. None at all. I mean, it's a short one. But Sorrento apparently has, he clears the gate first and he gets the Copper Key first. He's number 1 on the scoreboard right now, and that's not sitting well with anybody. It's a nightmare come true for them, for all independent gunters. The Sixers' lead seems insurmountable at this point, despite the best efforts of the gunters. He can't seem to make any sense of the clue, Parzival. His confusion and frustration soon turn to despair. Parzival's already been in a deep, dark depression as it was before this, so this is just not healthy for him at all. Figuring his chances to win have been eclipsed by the Sixers, and without friends, Wade finds himself inching toward complete hopelessness. For the first time, he envisions a different kind of escape as a remedy for his turmoil. Wade fantasizes about leaving the Oasis behind, escaping his apartment, and finally escaping life itself by jumping to his death. But, Shoto showing up. This interrupts Wade in his depression and his hopelessness. When he arrives to chat with Parzival to talk about what happened to Daito, Daito has left Parzival something in his will, and this just begs the question, why would a digital avatar need a will? But with that, it's discussion time. So what'd you guys think about reading this week? I felt that this was some of the more fast-paced. He committed seppuku, harakiri, or seppuku. You were very close. You kind of combined the two into one. Harakiri is actually one of my favorite Akira Kurosawa films. And they actually remade it back in, I don't want to say 2010, but it was in between 2010. I want to say it was around 2015 when they remade it. It might have been 2014. Really good. Really good. Highly recommend it to watch it. If you like Japanese samurai movies. If you don't like Japanese samurai movies, it's not going to be your thing. But man, it's a good one. The reading this week, there was some fast-paced parts to it. We're getting a side of Wade right now that is very very angsty. He feels like a victim. He's not picking himself up, dusting himself off, and moving on. He's staying stuck in his depression. He's not trying to help himself at all. Aside from going out and getting the motivation to go out and find the key on arcade, but that was a dead end for him with regard to the Jade Key. And he's and his pride's taking a hit now too, because he wouldn't have the Jade Key without H. Just as he told H wouldn't have the Copper Key without him. You know, this is Wade taking a long, hard look in the mirror, and he's just feeling completely hopeless. He's also losing the will to fight, which is not good. It's not healthy for him. As a reader reading this, like we all have those moments when we're hopeless, and I feel Wade's pain here, but at the same time, this is not going to help him. This is just going to make him go away. You know, that's not going to change the inevitable outcome. There's some heavy topics in this book, for sure. All right, guys, we're going to close it out here. Once again, thank you all for tuning into the CleverDingbat Ready Player One Book Club. I stream every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday over on Twitch. We would be glad to have you in our book clubs at 9 p.m. on Monday nights. Next week, we will be doing Ready Player One Session 6, which will be chapters 25 through 29. I look forward to seeing you all there. We'll be doing movie night this weekend on November the 7th at 10 p.m. and we will be watching Blade Runner. A link to Discord will be down below in the comments, as well as our Ready Player 2 giveaway, which will be happening on November the 24th. It's a player.gg campaign, so please click that link below and get in on that so you can win your own copy of Ready Player 2 either via Audible credit, Kindle book, or physical book, whichever you desire. Again, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one, and remember, be excellent to each other.